Let's talk about Apple Vision Pro, my pre-order experience, and what are some of the thoughts and questions I have about this new era of spatial computing. This is ArtIsRight. Before we start, subscribe if you're new and hit on the bell icon so you'll be notified every time I upload cool new videos like this. This is going to be longer because there's a lot of thoughts I like to share about Apple Vision Pro, but let's first start with my pre-order experience, which for the most part went smoothly until we got to the end where I have to pay. So I woke up just a little before 5 a.m. and the Apple Store app pretty much just refreshed right on time, and I was able to start scanning my face using the Face ID. Interestingly enough, you need an iPhone or an iPad with Face ID, so you have to already be part of Apple ecosystem to even be eligible to purchase this device, which I find rather interesting. Afterwards, I went through the eyesight questionnaires that they have, and because I wear contacts, I was able to skip through most of those questions or answer them, but I didn't need a prescription insert, so that was a good thing, but it does not work with glasses. That's one thing we found out, and if you have to go with prescription, you have to upload the prescription to Apple, to which Zeiss would then make the prescription, and I think those inserts for the prescription are also paired with the device in some way or the other. I'm not 100% sure on that yet, but we're going to find more information out as the device launch. So the next thing that comes up in terms of choosing the device is how much storage. Now, this was not disclosed before the pre-order date, how much storage there are, what are the different pricing tiers. So with this, I've gone with 256 gigabyte model. I have more thoughts on this later in a separate section. So eventually what I want to do was to pay this off in 12-month increment using my Apple Card, 0% APR. And this way I can slowly just pay it off. Now, mind you, I do have the money to pretty much pay all this off right away, but why not just use the 0% APR, right? And also get 3% cash back through Apple. Well, this didn't work. So I have an error on my card, and no matter how much I tried, I would not able to do it using this option at all. An hour and a half later, chatting through iMessage with Apple Card support, they weren't able to help me, and that's kind of where I was at. So I have to use another card to pretty much just order the Apple headset. And mind you, throughout this whole time, the ship date has already slipped. So by the time I put this order in, it was already mid-February before I'm gonna even get this Apple Vision Pro. So afterwards, just to keep the story short, I made a few extra calls into Apple Goldman Sachs, the card support. Essentially, at this point in time, as of this filming, my card is still locked. I cannot use it, and I have zero balance on the card. In good standing, I don't know why it's locked, and I have filed a complaint with the company, to which they say somebody will contact me in 24, 48 hours. Nobody have reached out to me during those multiple complaints or escalation that they have filed. So anyway, that's some interesting story. Now, I keep checking the App Store, and Apple did make some changes to the pickup date. And what I have found was that at one point, if you get a 512 gigabyte, you can have a sooner pickup date. And I was willing to go through that. But after Apple updated the pickup date inventory, I was now able to order 256 again and be able to pick it up, not on launch date, February 2nd, but a few days later, I think on February 5th or something like that, which is actually not a bad thing. So I'm still gonna be able to get it early enough that I can try on, I can do videos, I can do a review about it. And that's primarily the goal, what I really wanna do. So another thing that I also found out as well is that Apple really wants you to go to the store to pick this up so that they can verify fit, because unlike, other devices like computer, I mean, you just have to choose a spec that you want. This one, you have to choose a spec, but you also need to make sure that it fits, even more so than an Apple Watch, and I found that rather interesting. Here are some other questions I have about Vision Pro. Being that this is a first generation device, the full usage and benefit is not fully clear to me at this point, other than content consumption. There are two Apple devices I want to highlight here, one of them being the Apple Watch. Now, the first gen was slower, but a lot of the features that was there in first gen is there in the current generation as well, just on a much faster silicon now. And the watch battery life and everything, it's much better. Now, Apple market the first generation watch more of a fashion statement. There are some fitness ability, but the main key thing was being able to get messages on your wrist and also the most precise timekeeping. They're no longer really marketing those as the primary features anymore. The features now is you use Apple Watch for fitness to really track, your fitness ability and the way how you exercise and all those things. It's used for adventure, for example, Apple Watch Ultra, and it is a potential life-saving device with the O2 sensor and the heart rate sensor and all these other sensors they put into the device. And the O2 sensor, they're going through a little patent thing right now. We're not going to talk about that. So the way how they changed the message was interesting, but the features were already there. I'm hoping that Vision Pro will be a similar thing where the features are already there, but they change the message in the future or add more features in and more developer jump into the platform. But Apple Watch first gen, I mean, I got one of those and it wasn't fully clear to me either, although I use an Apple Watch pretty much consistently now for the past, I don't even know how long. So I have been an Apple Watch fan, not necessarily from day one, but just a little bit after day one to say. Now, when it comes to iPad, the first time Apple did a keynote for iPad, I saw the potential for this device pretty much right away. Not only for content consumption, but to use this in a sales session, to just pretty much show your clients, this is what you're gonna get. This is kind of like a PowerPoint. This is the website, what it would look like. And this is the quote for the price that you can shoot it to them right away. Did it ever work out to that point of seamlessness? No, but it does came in to benefit me in the ways how I thought it would immediately and right away. And that was a good thing. Now, there were some other promises on the first gen iPad, being able to use Photoshop and edit images and everything. I mean, the silicon wasn't really fully there yet. Apple was still building that up. And also, I mean, the ability of the software itself wasn't fully quite there and the developers weren't really into it. I mean, it took, I would say, almost close to a decade before we got Lightroom for iPad, before we got Photoshop in the current version now that works fairly well. And if you want to do work on your iPad, you can. But there are other apps that paved the way before that. But for serious work, I mean, it did took some time for us to get there on the promise that, hey, you know, this is something that we could have actually do since day one, but it wasn't quite there. So when it comes to Vision Pro, it is a spatial computing and is more so what I see right now is in terms of consumption and immersiveness. You're going to get all of those. But if you take a look at Apple Vision Pro website, a lot of what they cover is content consumption itself. The production itself comes from mirroring your Mac to the Vision Pro. And I find that rather interesting. So I'm also not in an industry that will directly use this in a way that would see direct benefit. For example, engineering, you can visualize the part. I'm not in that. I'm not in medical where I need to visualize internally body parts or organs or anything like that. So what I want to know is for someone who's doing content creation like myself, what would this type of benefit be in a non-specific industrial that is really already using some of these in the daily workflow? How much productivity am I going to get out of this versus this being a consumption device? I don't know yet, but I definitely do want to find out. A few other bits that I want to know about is macOS desktop mirroring. So the demo with laptop that Apple have done was really interesting because they were using their laptops to do that, the MacBook, MacBook Pro. But what I'm curious is if you have, for example, an iMac with Apple Silicon, a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio with Apple Silicon, is this going to work the same way? Can you pretty much do the mirroring and do it through your headset, or does it only work with laptop? That's one of the things that it's not really fully apparently clear, and there may be some notes on the website, but I haven't seen that just yet or gone through just yet. So I'm sure the heavy lifting is actually done on the Mac side, but what I'm curious about is it wirelessly transmitting all the data from the Mac itself to the headset, and how that whole thing is going to work. For example, if I'm in a bad Wi-Fi spot, is it going to do ad hoc? Is it going to go back to Bluetooth? That's something that I am curious to know, and how much is going to work in terms of, for example, if I'm using Final Cut Pro. The other thing too is I want to use the Pro apps on here. I want to use Lightroom Classic. I want to use Photoshop. I want to see how that works. Particularly in Lightroom Classic, what I want to do is call images and zoom in one-to-one and see how that's going to really play out. Would that benefit me any more than using just a laptop or a monitor that I have on my desk? Would that be anything fun to use or more immersive for me? We'll have to see. The other thing that I want to touch on as well is panorama image immersiveness. Now, Apple have showed this demo. What I want to know is this will work with any pano or only pano shot with an iPhone. That's something interesting there because, I mean, there might be some metadata involved. That's something to find out. But at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of these features that has been shown in Apple demos or on the website is one of those things where it is more of a demo feature, and I want to know how much of this long term am I going to use, because most of the time when I use my iPad, I'm using it to do something like this right now. I'm also using this mostly as a content consumption device, watching streaming, YouTube, all the other streaming apps that I use, doing some emails here and there. I want to know how much of that device is going to come into production in the way how I think it is, or is it more something where I want to just take a break, get entertained, I will put that on. So I'm going to say this, it is a rather expensive hardware for content consumption, but I feel that from what I've seen so far, I'm probably going to enjoy it. I like it anyway. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of tech in that device, and we got to the point where Apple is packing a lot of tech in that headset. The silicon is there, it has great hardware, it also has great software engineering as well. The fact that the headset itself can just, monitor your gesture wherever your hands is without having to use another input device, I think that's big. And I think that's going to bridge the gap between spatial computing to a lot more people. Now, will this democratize the way how people are using computing devices, the way how iPhone is, the way how iPad is, or Apple Watch is? I don't know yet. I am curious to see, but at this point in time, I feel like the device price point is one of the biggest barrier to entry at this point in time. And in the future, if Apple end up releasing other versions that are priced more nominally in the market, more value conscious consumers can jump into it, it might end up becoming one of those things to change, or this might just end up becoming one of those devices that are really just there for a specific segment of market. I really want to see where this is going to go. So anyway, I'll be picking my device up from an Apple store. I'll be doing videos, answering some of these questions that I have, hopefully showing some demo. And one last thing I want to point out in this is that it would be extremely difficult to film this headset in the way how Apple have done it, because they have gone behind a person and you can see the screen up front. I mean, I can tell you right now, if I do something like that, put a camera behind me, the only thing you're gonna see is a curtain, a sound wall, and pretty much a camera and light box and everything. So it's not gonna be quite as straightforward to demo this, but we'll see what we can do when it comes to that. Anyway, so there's a lot of things coming on this channel regarding Apple Vision Pro. Stay tuned for that, but I'm gonna take a pro creative approach to this. And as a creative like myself and many of you out there, can we benefit from this, or this is more of a content consumption device? We'll be answering that question as well. Questions or comment, leave them below, give us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you're new, and not retrust.